Breaking news USA Today.
Days
Talking
of
estate
ceasefire
in
and
America.
negotiations later, the US and Iran are back to square one. Both sides failed to breach the deadlock during talks in Islamabad. Now, US President Donald Trump has ordered fresh mobilization in the Hormuz Strait. In a post on his Truth Social account, Trump announced that he will impose a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. This means US forces will block any and all ships that are trying to enter the crucial waterway. Trump also added that those ships who are paying a toll to Iran will not have safe passage in the high seas. Trump has vowed to force open the Strait of Hormuz. The American president says that any Iranian who attacks US ships will be blown to hell. This could reopen the gates of war that are so far being held by a fragile ceasefire. Trump has issued a warning to Iran. He says that US forces remain locked and loaded and will finish whatever is left of Iran. Trump is responding to a blockade with a blockade. This could send shockwaves through global oil markets due to the complete choking of the Strait of Hormuz. The US has previously used blockades against Venezuela and Cuba. The crown jewel of the US Navy, the USS Gerald R. Ford, is back in action. It has joined the USS Abraham Lincoln and the amphibious assault ship, the USS Tripoli. American forces are already stepping up operations to open the Strait of Hormuz. Two destroyers passed through the strait on Saturday. This was the first transit by American ships during the war and a challenge to Iran's control of the waterway. The Iranian side, however, said that the US warships were forced to escape after they issued a warning. Following the collapse of US-Iran talks in Pakistan, Israel's army chief, Eyal Zamir, has ordered heightened readiness. Israeli forces have been asked to identify fresh targets and prepare strike packages. Iran's nuclear enrichment and the Strait of Hormuz blockade remain the main sticking points. Both the US and Iran declared that no common ground had been reached during the talks in Islamabad. Is there more diplomacy to come? Will the diplomatic needle still move? Or will there be a full-blown war for the Strait of Hormuz? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And to find answers to some of these questions, joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Dr. Charles.
It's surprising. I think it's worrying. Had there been at least some movement, some sense that the sides were coming together, I think J.D. Vance and the Iranian delegation would have stayed and tried to continue talking. The fact that the talks ended early Sunday morning and everybody went home is worrying. It suggests frustration. It suggests that both sides saw no real chance of moving the ball forward. And so now we're back in a situation in which each side is threatening the other side. We're yet at the cusp of a return to full-scale war, but the announcement that the United States is going to blockade the Gulf and try to put additional pressure on the Iranian economy does suggest that we're moving back away from diplomacy toward coercion and the potential use of force.
Right, we hear you, Dr. Trump, blaming each other, but now, of course, the bigger question is what comes next? Are we likely to see another push for diplomacy, as Trump has very recently claimed that Iran has not even left the bargaining table and they are going to come back and agree to all the terms? But at the same time, as we're seeing the escalation that is happening already, and Trump is saying that he is going to effectively blockade the Strait of Hormuz, which was essentially opened before it even, began Iran. How do you make sense of that?
Well, I do think there'll be more negotiations. There was a sense that talking is useless. My guess is that we would already hear explosions in Tehran and that the war would have. And as a consequence, I think we're going to see at least a pause on further military action while Trump tries to tighten the screws on the Iranian economy. The problem, though, that Donald Trump faces is that he can't really open up the strait if he's blockading it. There's a contradiction here. He desperately needs oil and gas to be passing through that strait into the global economy. But you can't do that if the U.S. is blockading it. You can't do that unless you've cleared the mines that Iran has already put into the strait. You can't really do that in wartime because it's very dangerous for tankers to pass through the strait if the Iranians are going to fire at them, whether it's with a guided missile or whether a speedboat or a mine or a naval drone. And given the impact of this war on the global economy, I do think that Donald Trump is under a lot of political pressure to get that strait open. That says to me that we're going to see some more diplomacy and coercive bargaining before we see more war.
And you've raised a very important point. This conflict has been marked by contradictions from the very beginning. And now, given the military buildup in the region, the string of threats, and also the lack of clearly defined cogent objectives from the very outset, do you think that escalation was perhaps always the more likely outcome here? Or was there perhaps an underlying strategy to use these talks and what Iran called maximalist demands to perhaps corner Tehran into rejecting the deal altogether? Do you think that was the plan all along?
No, I don't. I think that, like many wars, you lose control of where it goes. I do think that Donald Trump believed that this was a war that would last less than a week, that the Iranian regime was weak, that Iran's proxies in the region had been significantly disarmed, and that if the U.S. and Israel hit hard the Iranian regime, killed the leadership, it would be only a matter of days before the Islamic Republic fell apart and the people took to the